Hey everyone, welcome to the NANOG 91 Hackathon introduction call. We'll be going over some simple logistics, hotel information, schedules and times today, and give you an introductory feel of what to expect at the hackathon. So first, we couldn't do this without our sponsors. Want to give special shout outs to AWS and Container Lab. The hackathon is part of an educational mission of NANOG's that these sponsors help support. Our goal is to provide this experience such that knowledge can be shared amongst participants to help foster new ideas that will help the community and the participants learn and grow. Talking about some simple times and places to be. All times will be provided in Central Daylight Time. We will be holding our competition on Sunday, June 9th. The room will be open at 9 a.m. in the morning. Feel free to come in for breakfast. We won't actually start formally until 11 a.m. So you can come in, meet some people, get acquainted, and just an easy transition into the start of the competition. We'll have that go till 4:30 in the afternoon, where then we'll be giving out prizes to our first two teams to complete the highest amount of points. I'll talk about that in a second. And ideally wrap up by 5 p.m. Our main primary way of communicating with the community is via Slack, and additionally Zoom, but most of the time, Slack is the most or least barrier of entry, lowest barrier of entry for a lot of people. Just come in and chat. Everyone that registered should be a member of the NANOG 91 Hackathon channel. You can use @mentors to reach anybody from the Hackathon committee for any questions that you may have. We kindly ask that you don't use @channel, as that just sends a lot of people notifications that may not necessarily be awake. And or we don't want to distract anybody from focusing on, resolving scenarios and completing challenges. We will be broadcasting the room as we have in the past over Zoom for remote participants to join that can't join us in person. Feel free to join that at 9 a.m. and start participating remotely at 11. Otherwise, we'll in the room try to have a microphone and communicate back and forth with Zoom participants as necessary. But like I said, I would default to Slack. So what is this whole thing about? Like, what are we doing? What's the theme? The hackathon has changed as years have passed in terms of its central focus. But last time and this time around, we have the last time was the start of this new focus of a challenge style theme, where we're going to be giving you a variety of network problems and seeing if you can fix it or resolve it. Hackers will be presented with a set of scenarios that have different challenges within. So last time around, it was pretty much for each objective or each challenge. Um, Sorry, mincing words here, that for every challenge, there would only be one flag or one objective to complete, or one way to gain points for that challenge. This time around, we're making it a bit more granular, where each challenge will have objectives within that you can add up points to complete the entire challenge, or only partially completed and effectively get partial points. This will all accumulatively come together as a total sum of a score. Scoring each scenario is 10 total points with challenges within. The two teams with the most amount of points at the end wins. In the event of a tie, the first to submit will win. So hopefully all that makes sense. With that, I think we're going to transition into talking about the infrastructure. Saw a bit of an intro of that in this slide that's strangely out of order. Each scenario will have a collection of routing devices and some number of hosts pre-configured in a topology. And Chris, if you're ready, I can hand this over to you and push the slides.
All right, so yeah, I'm Chris. I tend to work the most on the infrastructure side for the hackathon. So let me go into these slides. One thing I will want to mention is that not every challenge will require this infrastructure. Um, I'm speaking for myself. I'm actually working on one that does not. So not every challenge will require this infrastructure. We'll try to container lab infrastructure, but there will be some element to interact with each one. We deploy an AWS EC2 instance for each team, each hacker or hacker team, and we will spin those up for you on request. So get in touch with one of the mentors, and we will give you we will spin up an instance for your use and give you the IP address of that instance. And those instances will have each of the problem scenarios staged. We will post a public SSH key into the Hackathon channel. It'll be the same key for every instance, so please be respectful and don't try to log into any instances that don't belong to you. It'll have a v4 and a v6 address, so you can use either. SSH tunnel also works for reaching into containers that are running on that device. This is one of the topologies you may find. This is one that we've used for quite a bit. It will be virtual routers and virtual or containerized routers, containerized hosts. Generally, they are set up in a dual stack with v4, v6 addressing and reachability. And each scenario will come with a diagram and like the type you see to the right, and a note of the challenges of what we want you to do do with the topology, and what we want you to troubleshoot or get operational or get functional. Quick tutorial on SSH access when using a SSH key. If you use the PAM key, you can put that in your SSH key directory. I believe we have a document for using this on other platforms, like from Windows, from Linux, from Mac OS. So we'll be providing that. One important thing is that you need to make sure that the permissions on the key file is set to 600 or user only, depending on how Windows handles that. SSH client will not use a key that is group or world readable, and then utilize that key to authenticate to the AWS instance. And here's a quick screenshot of how that works. Just the commands to run. I prefer to use the key file host name as an environment variable, and then use that to reference. So you can see you don't have to drop it into your home directory, the .sh directory, but that does tend to make things easier. Grab the key, put it in your directory if you choose. Run the chown command to set the permissions on it, and make sure it's owned by you and it is set to user only readable. You should see that when you do an ls on Mac or Linux. And then you can see the command -i. For Unix like OSs, the -i is the argument to reference the key. And then for each of these instances, these are Ubuntu instances, so you'll use the Ubuntu username as the default username for SSHing into your instance. These scenarios, so Container Lab is the system under which we are running the network topology and the network containers. And you can see an example of what that topology looks like from the command line when you run the clab inspect command. You'll see that there are 6 containers set up. The topology you'll see in a YAML file, the YAML file that gets referenced. And if you look at that YAML file, you'll see that there are references to the nodes and the references to how different interfaces on those nodes are linked to get together. But you'll see here is that each one has a management address that you can use to reach it, or you can use the Docker exec commands to get CLI access to each of these. As I said, you can use the Docker exec command to log into an instance. One thing to keep in mind is that for different network OSs, there is a executable for the OS command for the network OS command prompt that is different from the base Linux or Unix command prompt. So COS is Arista, and it is CLI with a capital C. CRPD is Juniper's containerized network OS. The Junos execution environment is launched by using CLI with lowercase. If you are logging into the Unix subsystem or just Unix servers, bash is all you need to specify as your executable. Here's an example of that. Using the host name that you saw that was in the Docker, the clab inspect command, you can use Docker exec to get the command line on that device, just using the command as is. Remember the CLI with a capital C. That gives you a prompt. Go to enable. There should be no password required for enable, and then from there you can run all of your normal Unix, all your normal network OS show, configure, troubleshoot commands as you normally would a real network device. Mostly, we've been using COS for these. If you're not familiar with the rest of COS, one thing that you'll note is that most of the commands are almost identical to iOS. All of your show interface, show IPVGP, show run for routing to display a configuration. Those work more or less exactly the way you expect them to. There's some minor differences, but not substantial. One thing to point out is that if you're doing a configure command on a COS or EOS or COS, you have an option of doing it very much iOS like, where you run configure and then each configuration command takes effect as you type it, or you can run configure session, which works much more like the GNOS configure mode, where you enter in your configuration commands, but then they don't take effect until you run commit afterwards. One gotcha with that is that commit on EOS does not save the config; it activates it, but does not save it. Back to iOS style, you make sure that you do a write mem afterwards to make sure that your config change survives a reboot. Here is included as a link to Arista's EOS documentation, and of course, the mentors will be around if you have any specific questions.
Thanks, Chris. So that wraps up our slides. Does anybody have any questions? One thing, I'm not sure if I skipped over the slide, but in discussion of talking about curating teams, this is mostly what this call is for, people to introduce themselves and get to know each other. But second to that, in general, you don't have to have a group or a team to work with in any of these challenges. You can work on your own, or you can meet people and work with others. If you already have friends that are coming to NANOG with you and want to have a team together, fantastic. And last but not least, I'll say is that if you have any kind of struggle in breaking into the community or need assistance in finding a team, coming in late potentially to the competition, feel free to hit up the mentors, and we can probably make some introductions. Okay, does anybody potentially want to suggest a team? Anybody know if they're already going to be working with somebody else? Okay, well, I'm sure that you can all handle that privately outside of the call. And I think with that, we can.
Or in the Hackathon Slack channel.
Yes, yes. And if you have not received that invite, feel free to drop a message in chat and send us an email. And we can make sure we get that sorted for you. Alrighty, well, I think we're gonna adjourn the call. Thanks, everybody, and we'll see you next weekend.